to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Well, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta, and I'm excited to be back with Mr. Peter Scott. This is the second of a two-part interview. And last time we talked all about Peter and his backstory and how he got to where he is. And I think things like NASA came up, jet propulsion, the future, the House of Lords, Nerdism. I mean, if you want to know what that is, go back and listen to the first one because it'll not make sense what we're talking about right now. But everybody, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about Peter so I can brag about him instead of him bragging about himself. He's a humble man. He's a futurist, an author, TEDx speaker, technology expert. Has a master's degree from Cambridge. No, he didn't come on a bridge. In Cambridge University. And he's done a whole bunch of neat things. His Next Wave Institute teaches how people to thrive through technological disruption. And we're really enjoying this story with you, Peter. So I want to get you back into that story where we left off last was you walking into the House of Lords in Great Britain. You were invited, which is a high honor, to talk about your TEDx talk, which you just released about artificial intelligence. And then in between the interview sessions, you said something to me that was compelling. So why don't you start there?
Sure. For, I think, over 30 years now, I've been participating outside of work in personal development work, seminars for self-discovery, and that was about as different from engineering as you could get. I was probably the only engineer that I was in any of those. And it was a lot of work of filing off the edges of the nerdism, if you will, not to put that down, but to accept it and embrace that part of myself. And yet, if I were to gauge my progress on that, and I did judge myself, I would say, look, I'm not ready for anything that means going out in public, talking to people, because I was comparing myself against people who were the best in the business at that, the best kind of motivational speakers and people at communicating and understanding people. And when I got my epiphany, my call to talk to people about AI, I still wasn't ready. I said to myself, look, there are so many people that are so much better at this, but I realized that I could build those bridges and I found that people would listen to me. And I said, I can't wait for people to be for me to be ready. I've got to do this anyway. And I discovered that I could make a difference without having to be ready, that I could do that. I was probably the last person to realize that I could do that. I gave a talk to a room full of college kids, and they were just entranced, and they mobbed me afterwards as an indication of that. Months later, I got word that one of them was using me as the name of a character in one of their creative writing assignments. It was that good. And I said to one of my mentors, look at that. That's wow. Do you see that? I actually made a difference. And they said, yeah, we knew that all along. Now you've finally come across and realized it too.
Well, thank you for that wisdom, everybody. That's a teaching moment. You got to, in fact, have your children listen to that. The thing of is, there's a saying I heard before called "You were born ready," and as we were talking about on the last part of the show here, that many of us are born golden. We're born ready, and what's put in us, and up till about age 20, our brain can't tell whether it's fact or fiction, so it just believes it is that we're not ready to do things. We're not good enough. My mind went in so many different directions. I just want to honor what you said about the word nerdism. I'm an advocate for many things, mental health, because I've dealt with that in my lifeline. My childhood wasn't great. People know about that through my story, but also for bullying. And a friend of mine wrote a book out of the U.S., and I actually put my name in a passage on the back of it. We're on this mission to eradicate bullying with love. And that book is called Rotund Roland, about a large kid who has gigantism, and the teacher was actually the one bullying him, and it wasn't Peter until a girlfriend came in his life that showed him he was worthy, that he stood up for himself And I think I said something like, to stand up for yourself is to stand up for somebody else. And I was thinking about nerdism, and then some of these names came into my mind, like Albert Einstein and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. And I don't know if you know this, but in my coaching practice, I teach a personality science tool called the People Code by a Dr. Taylor Hartman. It's 30 years. It's unique. It's not about behavior. It's about motives. And there's 4 different types of personalities I teach. And one of them is the personality type is called the white personality, which I think fits a little bit of your profile. And the white personality is what lives with the motive of peace. In other words, not wartime, but can we all just get along? Is everybody okay? And so you see, my daughter's a white. You see a lot of white personalities where they're not emotion-based creatures, but you can't always tell they're not as expressionful. They like to be independent on their own. Sometimes stepping out and into conflict is not comfortable, so they have to develop the courage to do it. But they're some of the most brilliant people because they see through everything. They have this logic, and they're the most kind people. And I'm not labeling you, but I think you have a lot of white in you. And so that's why I like to slay that term nerd, because I was referred to that, but I'm not a nerd. You're not a nerd. I mean, I'd rather be called a drone than a nerd, or whatever you want to call me. So I honor you, Peter, because we're just slayed the dragon. There's no more nerds in the world. That's just a false term. Let's get into something called AI. What is that? Just give us what you can and tie that to this thing you called being a futurist.
Artificial intelligence is a computer doing something that is complicated, something that might normally require a human to do, something we might not be able to explain how to do, like recognize faces, but the computer learns how to do it. And that's a scale that we've started to explore, but can go all the way up to anything that a person could do. And the reason that futurists are engaged in this is because the development in that is exponential. And I had someone from one of my classes tell me a couple of weeks ago, well, you won't have to explain what exponential growth is anymore. Everyone's been looking at virus propagation charts for the last couple of months. They know what that means. And that applies to artificial intelligence, the rate at which this develops. And because we do not naturally understand exponential growth, our minds want to see linear progression, that catches up with us faster than we expect. The saying is that we overestimate what we will achieve in the next 2 years, we underestimate what we will achieve in the next 10. That's exponential growth versus linear expectations. And that artificial intelligence has the prospect of transforming and taking over parts of our economy, our society, our business, where we're used to our power of thinking, our cognition, as being what grants us access to that. But artificial intelligence is making inroads on that and developing in that. And this takes it in 2 directions, where it's simultaneously tremendous benefit and simultaneously a great disruptive risk. And don't need to tell anyone what disruption does now.
Absolutely. So let's take it down to our children. You have 2 daughters, 10 and 6. I have a daughter's 22 in university. How do they have to prepare themselves for this change we're seeing with AI, or how will their jobs and careers be different in your opinion?
The main thing is we can't predict that. Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, when you were in high school, they could tell us this is what the next 20 years is going to be like in any profession and get you ready for that. Now we don't know 5 years out what kind of jobs there will be. And so it's about preparing someone's character, preparing their resourcefulness, teaching them not to panic, teaching them to engage with the qualities that make us most human. And you can look at that in contrast to the things that are at risk. Rote learning, doing anything that involves following a procedure, anything that where you feel like you're acting like a machine, because guess what? That's what machines are going to do. So this calls for a transformation in education, because teaching knowledge is no longer going to be useful. It's about teaching character. It's about teaching the process of discovery, of how to acquire knowledge, not which knowledge it is.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think I read in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, a long time ago, something about the education system being broken. And I read that term, education on demand, that people even say today that university degrees are going to be worthless because educators don't even know what the future is, how to teach it. And, if you want to be a NASA scientist, you go find the education on demand and learn. It's just also so different. There's a lot about NASA. I want to ask you something here. I want to put it at you with something that's a quote from somebody you know of, the guy who made Amazon there, Jeff Bezos. And I just read a book called The Bezos Letters. A friend of mine wrote it. And in it, this is the way that Bezos is thinking about the future. It blew my mind. He said that they were working on allowing businesses to create on their PCs in their home companies in space. And Bezos's vision is that the Earth would be a world park. I'm just looking at it going like, what? But just when you hear things like that, being a futurist, what's your thought? I mean, are we already? People don't know what they don't know, but there's SpaceX and all these things going on. The average person doesn't understand any of that. How fast are we evolving, and is that something that would be possible?
Wow, that's a lot to put on the table.
I know.
My view is we're at the beginning of a golden age of development here. The previous 20 years, it seemed like things had stagnated, and I was seeing not that much development. But in the last 5-10 years, things have really taken off with deep learning, advances in energy storage, looking at things like the electric vehicle revolution and private space exploration. Bezos and Elon Musk and others all doing this and achieving things at incredible velocity. And certainly in the future, that's one of our directions is going to be becoming a multiplanetary species.
Yeah.
And it's actually Elon Musk's goal of establishing a colony on Mars is motivated by his beliefs about some of the risks that we face on this planet. He's trying to make a backup of the human race.
Wow, that's incredible. Tell us what futurist means. I assume you have a business card with that on it?
Sure, I do. Futurist is something that I'd like to have on everyone's business card. And that's really the thesis of my TEDx talk. Because we're entering an era now where we can't leave the future up to a few people. We can't let it remain owned by a handful of people to think about, to speculate about, to create, because things are going to be too volatile. We've seen the impact of destructive disruption with a virus. There's not really an upside to a virus, but a lot of us are experiencing some kind of positive impact in our lives, but no one would say, well, let's have a pandemic so we can get that. Everyone would say, I think we should look for another way of experiencing benefits, like having more alone time. Artificial intelligence, to call it a dual-use technology is kind of damning it with faint praise. It's like calling a nuclear bomb a firecracker. AI, because when you say dual-use technology, people think, oh, we know what this means. Like hammers, you can build houses with those, or you can hit someone on the head. So don't hit someone on the head with a hammer. Problem solved. That's just not the scale in which artificial intelligence has these two potentials. I saw a demonstration of a tool that was used for defending aircraft carrier battle groups. It could select targets, identify foes, launch missiles, and so forth. The same software with tweaks could be sold to diagnose medical problems, diseases. Now, what else is in that category? And so we can see with artificial intelligence this progression of evenly paced benefit versus peril, and what separates the two of those, what determines which one we get, is us. And if we charge into the future as blindly as we have until now, then we will be caught ping-ponging between these increasingly divergent positive versus very negative effects. It's time for everyone to wake up and realize the power that they have to create the future with everyone else.
That's such a compelling statement. I mean, we can just pause everybody and just listen to that last one. Come back and listen to this, or hit the rewind button. I mean, I think reflection is a big thing there. You know what scares me about AI? Just the whole concept, and I don't really understand it as well as as you do. I look at what you said about the computer aspect and what happened with the MAX aircraft with Boeing, and I ask myself, are corporations, are the governance structures set up properly, or whatever? You know, you have this power, you have this capability. It has to be used right. You know, you can't cut corners. It can't be used for ill, and that whole thing is just blows my mind. So I really think we'll be talking again. I want to just tell you that something I heard about the other day, which was kind of cool, is through my publisher, they said that they're talking to a company that using AI, they'll be able to put my book out there, and then the reader will be able to have a conversation with the book, and AI, artificial intelligence, will answer their questions as if it's me, which is like, I mean, I did computer programming in school, Peter, where it was like this monolith thing, and you filled out these cards with a pencil, and you shoved 1,000 of them in, and you wrote code. And today it's so advanced. I can't imagine the programming that goes into, or whatever you call it, but just fascinating stuff. We have a couple minutes just to be wrapping up here. So I want to ask you, Peter, to tell us where to get a hold of your body of work. You have a book. You must have a link to your TED Talk. How can people get a hold of you?
Sure. I've got a website, humancusp.com. That's human, C-U-S-P, cusp.com, because we're approaching a cusp between positive, negative, a balancing point, a choice point. And that's got links to my TED Talks, and you can see the video of my appearance in Parliament, and got a link to my book as well.
Fantastic. Everybody, the book is called The Crisis of Control: How Artificial Superintelligences May Destroy or Save the Human Race. I've got an author signed copy, and you want to read that. Peter, I do this all the time on my show. I honor you with some leadership words. I've been writing these down as we've talked. From what you said, they're not scripted. And so the first one is humility. Absolutely, you have humility. Second is courage, man. I mean, from what you said about your backstory and what you're doing with your life to change the world, awesome. Third is wisdom. I think in the book Outliers, they talked about mavens. And everybody, if you want to know something about the topic of AI, or jumping out of an airplane, or Asperger's syndrome, call Peter. And then the last one is enough, Peter. I love you and your story. You are enough, man. And I'm glad that you've realized that. And your children are blessed. By the way, I met your daughters at the TED Talk. They're sweet. You have a nice family. So let's go to wrap this up and give you the last word.
Well, thank you. I think that the human race has a basic dilemma, an existential question, which is, do we deserve the future? Any one of us has an individual answer to that. But if we look at the human race collectively and ask ourselves, do we deserve to inherit the kind of power that artificial intelligence could give us? all the way up to conquering disease, death, granting us the ability for instantaneous communication between everyone, we would have questions about that. And so my work ultimately comes down to, what do we need to do to deserve that, to inherit the future, so that we can go out into the universe with a clear conscience that we're not going to muck it up for everyone else that's out there. And everyone can get on board with that message, no matter what you're doing. You don't have to be engaged at the leading edge of technology or business or education or anything, but helping people understand how they can be their best self is part of that mission, and it has to be for everyone.
Well, that's fantastic. And I just, my mind went in a different direction. I want to steal another 30 seconds before I wrap this up. And that is, everybody, that as you listen to Peter, these 2 episodes, I see a resource here. And Peter's humble. He's not going to plug his work because I don't do commercials. But Peter, I want to tell you that in the work I do, I run CEO peer groups. These are peer groups of leaders, 10 to 12, who come together for a day and learn. I remember in my CEO job that when things like security, IT security risk came up, I'm a generalist and, I gloss over. I have no clue. So what did my IT guy do? He brought in an expert on security, everything from security to advanced topics like AI. Even when digital marketing came out, a lot of executives who run companies didn't even understand what that meant. So they draw on leaders and resources. So everybody, I'm going to plug Peter. You need to call him. If you do a mastermind group, if you need a speaker at a conference or somebody who just can come in and talk to the executive team about this topic, I'm sure you can get a hold of Peter direct. He can tell you what his resources are. And you got to pay him, because you don't get advice from something like this that's high value for free. So Peter, thanks for being on the show. And we'll definitely have you back to riff about jumping out of planes and scuba diving. Everybody, find the show on your favorite podcast channel. Give it a high rating to honor Peter Scott's work. It's notable. And find that true passion, like you hear from Peter about his work. Live with purpose. Live that life that you deserve and desire.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca